All right, we just took delivery on a new pellet gun today, so time to start playing with it. We'll do things a little bit differently than they normally do, where they show you all the specifications and everything first. We're going to do it backwards. We're going to shoot the gun first and then tell you all the boring stuff at the last, so you don't have to muddle through that if you don't want to. Now, what we got here, what we have here is a FX Boss. It's made in Sweden. It's not cheap, but none of the good stuff ever is. Now, I got this gun from Airguns of Arizona, and I told them I wanted a turnkey operation, so it's all ready to go. They mounted the scope for me. They did some test shots and even gave me a little target to prove how accurate the gun was. And when I went and picked it up over there, we took a couple of shots with it at their indoor range. Now, all right, here's our 5-shot group, all touching each other. That would have hit a nickel at 28 yards, I think is what the rangefinder said. And you'll notice that that 30 caliber has a little bit of a punch to it. It punched through this piece of 1-inch board, which is really not 1 inch. It's more like 3/4. But anyway, it's got some power to it. Now, it's gonna work. All right, like I was telling my friend Pete here, what we're doing here is the initial ballistic test at 5 yards. That may seem kind of dumb, but let's assume that this dot was the head of a snake.
Yeah.
And the pistol, or the scope, is so high above the barrel that it might actually shoot low. So you need to know what your gun's going to do at any range. So if you're shooting at a snake and 5 yards is about as close as I want to get to one,
Yeah.
then you want to make sure you hit him in the head. So we're just going to take a couple shots at this little thing here at 5 yards. Then we're going to move out to 50, 25, excuse me, 15, 25, 50, 75, 100. I don't know if I'll have the energy to go out to 150, but we'll see. And what we're doing in every case is we're aiming at the center of these dots.
Yeah. Wherever it is, it goes.
And we're going to let the bullet fall where it may. That way we'll have a real-time ballistic curve. Now, you could figure all this out with computerized software and such, but you'd have to know the ballistic coefficient of the pellet, the weight of the pellet, the speed it's coming out of the barrel, of course the range, the velocity, all that stuff. So this way, we've got a real-time curve out here in the field, which is where we're going to be hunting. Now, the wind's almost calm today, but I suspect it'll probably, by the time I get to 100, it'll probably come up. So you can't really take these numbers, or whatever our results are, and call that the accuracy of the gun, because just a puff of wind is going to make a difference. Plus my hands shake. I've got a medical condition that causes that. But I was squirrel hunting one time, and the squirrels were about 5 yards away. And I was aiming right at their eye. And I was missing them. Well, what the hell? The squirrel's right there. I mean, the gun, can't be that far off it. And then I got to thinking, well, look how high that scope is above the barrel. So it's a good 1.4 minus the caliber of the bullet. It's a good 1.1 low at 5 yards. So now we'll move it out to 15. I got a feeling that's going to come up. We'll see. Okay, we've moved the target out to 15 yards now. We'll see how we do there. Probably pretty good. A little bit of wind blowing, not much. Again, we're aiming at the same place every time. Alright, kind of goofed up on that one. I had 2 pellets in the gun. I cocked it twice and didn't realize it. So we've got 2 on there that don't count, but the 3 that were good shots went basically in the same hole. So now we're out at 25 yards. Alright, the 25-yard ones went all through the same hole, so we're going to call that good. That's where the gun's zeroed. Now we're going to go out to 50. Pretty sure we're going to see a drop-off, unless the laws of physics ever reverse themselves. Well, there's 3 shots at 50 yards. They're not in the same hole, but they're touching each other. It's pretty damn good. Now we move out to 75. See what happens. Alright, here we are at 75. That's a pretty respectable shot for or distance for a pellet gun. Now I'm suspecting at this distance we're going to see a pretty marked drop off. I'm a little surprised at that 50-yard result there. I would have thought it would have been lower than that. But the 25 was maybe a 1/4 inch high, so but still, it's not much drop off. Let's see what happens. Alright, the first 2 went in the same hole. That's about an inch group, 75 yards. Now, it's highly possible this gun is more accurate than I am with my shaky hands and that bench there, so I'm happy with those 2. Those 2 there, who knows, maybe wind's starting to blow a little bit. Not much. Now the acid test out to 100 yards. Alright, so here's our ballistic curve. Up, straight across, down a little bit, down, and then way down. So that group would have hit a good sized jackrabbit. I don't know if I'd feel good about taking a 100-yard shot on a animal with that or not, but I bet at about 75 I will. So we put the egg up there. 100-yard was too far.
Yeah.
75, we'll see. 50, pretty much case closed. Alright, it's time to go over our results of today's test. Now, toward the end of the test, I may have been getting a little bit behind the power curve here because I really didn't know what to charge this gun at. I set it at 200 bar. Now it's down to about 110. So I didn't refill the gun any, and that may have been too low. Maybe I should have filled it up to 250 or 300. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Also, keep in mind I'm no expert shot or expert marksman by any stretch of imagination. I'm just an average, everyday dude. And we were shooting outside in field conditions. So it's almost a perfect day. I mean, there's hardly any wind out there, but it did kick up a little bit here and there. So the gun is actually better than these results are going to show, and plus I might have pulled a shot or 2, who knows. We were shooting these Diablo 30 caliber 44.75 grain pellets. They seem to be pretty accurate. Now, even though this is classified as a big bore air gun, these still look like pellets, just big ones. When you get up into 50 caliber, 45 caliber pellet guns or air rifles, then they start looking like slugs out of a black powder gun. So here's what we came up with. Remember, we took the shot at 5 yards, just to point out that you can miss a shot at close range because you don't know what's going on. If that had been a snake's head, a rattler, a copperhead, or water moccasin, and I put the crosshairs right on between his eyes, I would have missed him. I would have shot low by probably a good inch there anyway. 1 3/4 inches. So now I know that if I ever shoot a snake up close or whatever, I need to aim over him by 1.5 inches. These 2 shots here are a result of my being a dumb bunny, and I actually put 2 pellets in the gun, which, was possible. So disregard those 2. But anyway, the next shot at 15 yards, there's 3 shots. I pulled that one a little bit, but pretty much dead on. At 25 yards, all the bullets went in the same hole. I could maybe come down 1 or 2 clicks there and get it right in the bullseye, but I decided to leave it alone. I was very pleased at the 50-yard shots. Now remember, I'm aiming at the center of the dot every time, just letting the bullets fall where they may. So the 50-yard shots came in at a less than 1/4 inch group, 50 yards, and it only dropped, maybe 1/2 inch. So, well pleased with that. The gun is deadly out to 50 yards. Now at 75, I knew it was going to slow down and it was going to start to drop. I wouldn't have thought it was going to be really that much, but it did. It dropped 6 inches between 50 and 75. Right at 6 inches. And if you average those 3 shots, if I did that right, you come up with a little over an inch group, 1.02, say an inch. Now when we got out to 100 yards, as predicted, things opened up a little bit. 100 yards is a pretty good ways for an air rifle, and there was a little bit of wind blowing. We dropped 15.5 inches. I'll take that back. 14.5 inches. And I almost ran out of scope. I was down to the last bottom end of my scope by putting the crosshairs up here. If I look at where the average of these fell, which was right there, it was right at the bottom of my scope. So I'd have to aim up almost a whole scope distance to make a hit at 100 yards. That group came out to 1.65 inches. Now, the gun shoots better than that. Let's say that I'm half a minute angle accurate at 100 yards. That would have come in right at an inch. The crosshairs were wiggling around a little bit on this table that we've got here and the setup that I had. So that's pretty damn good. Now, personally, would I shoot a rabbit at 100 yards? Jackrabbit? Well, yeah, I'd take a chance. But for all practical purposes, I think I'm going to limit myself to about 75 yards. That would have hit a rabbit in the head. Anything from here all the way down would have done it. Now, 50 yards is a no-brainer because in my ballistic scope, it's a Hawk, I think. I've got little dash lines, and then I've got dots, and then I've got dash lines, and then I've got dots, and then I've got dash lines, and then I've got dots. So at 50 yards, you can do it one of 2 ways. If you're shooting at a squirrel or a rabbit, just put the crosshairs on top of his head. You're going to hit him right in the eye. If you want to be a little bit more scientific, then use that first little hash mark there at 50 yards, and if everything goes as planned and you put a good shot on him, then he's dead rabbit. I believe at 75 I was right in here at 2.5 dots up, and that's still in the ballpark. We'll get to the egg test in a minute. And then I can't remember how many dots you actually have, but then at the bottom it kind of goes into this deal like this where you've got these hash lines and then you've got some spaced even further apart. At 100 yards I was way down here. In other words, I had to bring the scope up to put that dot on the bullseye in order to hit it. And you might hit the egg, 50-50 chance, no wind, good shot, perfect day. But that's a little far out. I'm not saying you can't shoot targets that far. Sure you can. Put the egg out at 150 if you want to. I didn't have a chance to do that. Somebody showed up, started talking to me. But at 150 yards, I got a feeling it's not going to hit the paper. It's going to be way the hell down here. But nothing says you can't try it. So that's what we came up with. The gun is, you almost don't need even make an adjustment out to 50. 75, yeah, you do. It's going to shoot low. And of course, anywhere between 50 and 75, you're going to have to interpolate in here somewhere. So if we look at our ballistic graph, from 5 to 15 to 25 to 50, 75 to 100, it looks something like that. Now, if you've ever shot centerfire rifle, that's about the equivalent of taking a 270 Winchester and going out to 300 yards. It's going to look a lot like that. Now, of course, it's a longer distance, and the 270 is a faster gun, but the ballistic curve is going to be very similar. So, shooting out to 100 yards is the equivalent of shooting a 270 out to 300-400 yards, because you've got to account for the drop of this bullet. Now, the egg test. And I had to, let me tilt that up a little bit. I had to fuss around a little bit with it. I didn't try it at 100. I figured by that time I knew enough about the gun to know that 75 on in was going to meet my criteria of being able to hit the egg every time. Now, I didn't hit the egg every time because I think I was kind of on the backside of the power curve of the air. But part of the problem was I wasn't accounting for the wind, just a little bit, but I had to correct. I think the gun was shooting to the right a little bit, so I had to correct into the wind, or to the left about 1 hash mark. And once I figured that out, then I hit the egg every time I shot at it. And then at 50 yards, no brainer, 100% kills on the egg at 50. So your limitations may be different. Almost assuredly they are. But for me, with that gun, those pellets, a day like today, I came in with a figure of 75 yards to use this gun for hunting on something the size of a rabbit or a squirrel. And that's pretty much it. As far as things I like and don't like about the gun, as far as the gun goes itself, I didn't really find anything I didn't like about it. Good piece of equipment. Pricey, but like I say, all the good stuff is. And I think a lot of people give up on air rifles at a young age because they get them for Christmas or whatever, Crossmans, some of these other things, which is fine for kids because most of the time they're not really interested in hitting anything anyway. They just want to shoot. And if they do hit something, they want you to applaud them and give them support, which is what you should do. But they're not really interested in learning a lot about shooting. It's hard to get youngsters to sit down. So they move on to rimfire world, centerfire rifle world and all that, and thinking that air guns just aren't that accurate. Well, they can be, but you pay for it. The thing I like about it is it's quiet. I can hunt right around rabbits right around the house here in our little suburban deal we got going here. Doesn't scare the dog. He's kind of a wimp when it comes to when we bring the Magnums out. He goes running for the truck or into the woods like a scared little girl, and I had to go find my dog. But he hasn't associated the report of the air rifle, which is negligible, to the instrument itself. So the gun doesn't bother him. It's just the loud noise. Since the air rifle doesn't make a loud noise, he's good with it. There's a lot of reasons to go the air rifle route. The main thing that's going to knock you out of the saddle is the price of a good gun. And if you don't want to do that, don't even bother with the rest of the stuff. Stuff they sell down at Bass Pro, Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse is pretty much kid stuff, junk. It's not going to be accurate. This gun was delivered as a package deal. I told them I wanted a turnkey system, and the people at Air Guns of Arizona like what they do, so they like messing with it. They gave me a book here with a test target, 5 shots at 23 yards, and they're all in the same hole. And then they also gave me a chronograph report. I don't have my glasses on, but with whatever pellet they used, the average was 878, and the standard deviation was 2. So that's pretty consistent shooting. What else do I need to tell you? The 30 caliber, we'll just have to see when we start whacking rabbits with it. Sometimes the 25 doesn't do it. If you get a bad hit on one, it'll roll him, and then he'll end up jumping up and running off. I understand squirrels are even tougher. They'll run off and you can't find them after they've been mortally wounded. So that's why it's important to get an accurate gun. You gotta get a good hit on them. An old crusty African PH one time was interviewed by some snot-nosed journalist, and he said, you know, Sir Reginald, or whatever the cat's name was, where should you shoot dangerous African game? And the reply was, anywhere in the eye. Well, you have to modify that a little bit with air gun hunting. You're aiming at the center of the eye, and if you can pull that off, then you've got a good chance of bringing whatever you want down. So we went out this morning looking for rabbits, saw about 3 or 4, but didn't get a shot in on one. So we've got some hunting reviews to do with this gun. But the way this thing hits, 75 foot-pounds of energy, I think it's going to be plenty. Now, maybe one question you might have is, well, can I hunt feral pigs with it? Well, sure you can. I don't know. Personally, I don't think I'd try it. You're going to end up walking through the brush looking for a pissed off pig unless you hit him right behind the ear at pretty close range. But I don't know, look on YouTube, there's probably some videos of guys doing it.